Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Trevas. This is Chris Reiff, and we're the illustrators behind the Star Wars Blueprints books from DK Publishing. Star Wars has been a huge part of my life since I was a little kid. I used to draw Star Wars with crayons back in the day, and got in trouble for drawing starfighters on my TIE fighters all over the basement wall one time when I was a kid. But I started my Star Wars career. Well, I went to the Center for Creative Studies in downtown Detroit. It's art school. Went there for 4 years. And a little bit before graduation, I went to a convention and met with the people from West End Games who did the Star Wars role-playing game in the late 90s. And they liked my work, and I started illustrating back then. This is now I'm in 15 years of Star Wars illustrating, so I've got a lot of books under my belt, and this is one of our newest.
Well, and myself, I went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and kind of created an illustration program for myself because they didn't have one. Did basically graphic design and painting. Went out of school and actually started a toy design job, and I'm still doing toy design. It's my day job, basically. And worked on Star Wars stuff back in 95, 97, when the movies were coming back out into the theater, the original movies. Did a lot of stuff on Star Wars back then, and have continued to work on Star Wars toy products throughout the years. And maybe 5 years ago, started some more intense illustration work, specifically for books like these. And I've been kind of doing that more than I've been doing toy design work lately, with all the different books we've been working on together.
Yeah, Chris and I actually met at a convention back in '97.
Trying to build our own lightsabers.
Yeah, actually, that was the thing that got us together first on the internet. Was we met each other on an internet forum talking about lightsabers. So
it wasn't even a forum; it was before forums.
What? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Well, some of it is inspired by previous work that's come along. There's a book series from DK called the Cross Section series, where they did some kind of three-quarter views of different ships. So some of the internals have been defined loosely in that way. With this blueprint set, we had to get a lot more detailed because there are ways to cheat when you're trying to do it three-dimensionally, and you don't have to necessarily make everything fit the way it would. But when you cut straight through the side of it, and you have to show a guy sitting in a chair and show stuff that fits underneath him and in front of him and behind him, you have to kind of tighten that up and make a little more sense of it. So some of it is using that stuff that's come before and refining it a little bit. Other parts of it are totally new, made up. I mean, the weapons are one of those areas that's pretty much totally made up by us, the internals anyway. We all know what they looked like from the outside, and we get pretty good reference from Lucasfilm on that, where they'll send us behind-the-scenes photos just straight of the props, so we have a good reference point for the outsides. But figuring out what goes on the insides by reading books and having somebody describe in a book how they work, then we have to visualize what that means and what those internals look like. So that happens throughout the ships and base and everything else too, to varying degrees. So that's the long answer. The short answer is yes, we make some of it up, and no, some of it's already made up.
And everything does go through Lucas approval. There's a lot of people at Lucas, so they'll look at it for continuity and just make sure we're keeping in line with the other products. But sometimes they'll even ask us questions now. So.
Yeah, right before we came out here for the convention, we got an email from Lucasfilm asking us how big in real life the TIE Fighter and Darth Vader's TIE Fighter are relative to each other. So we have yet to reply to them that we need to do that when we get back.
Look at that. They have official answers, but they want to double check with us because we usually kind of go a little more in depth figuring that out.
Yeah,
so.
We're a little nerdier about it than they are. So. One of our shared hobbies is prop replicating. So we have a fairly extensive library of our own of pieces that the original prop makers used to make the props for the movies. So we referenced those pretty heavily. For the weapons, we had physical samples we could measure for everything to make the blueprints really accurate.
A lot of the stuff.
Yeah, not everything.
We don't have that big World War II machine gun that they used for the movie, but we got some good photos. A lot of the classic weapons were made from other things that movie productions might have on hand. They kind of dressed up some World War II weapons with a few accessories, and since you don't see them too well and they're shooting lasers, you don't really notice that they're old-fashioned weapons versus high-tech stuff.
Well, and the vehicles too, like the X-Wing is a good example, and the Millennium Falcon from the previous set. Because they had miniatures for the movie, there are physical models of those things around, and there have been a couple of companies that have produced exact, or as exact as possible, reproductions of those movie miniatures. And we're both fortunate enough to know the people at those companies who've been kind enough to share those replicas with us. So we each have a library of those things as well. But a lot of it it's all kind of all over the place reference-wise. Some of it's physical samples like that. Others, like the Y-Wing's a good example where the new stuff for Clone Wars, because it's all digital and created in a computer, it's real easy for Lucasfilm to send us nice high-res, perfectly straight-on views of the thing. So we'll get those and we'll have those to work from for one side of it. And then we'll reference models and photography, behind-the-scenes photography for the other stuff. And we do see a lot of stuff early on before it comes out. But it
Not
just
too often on these. But
well, not on these because
there.
these were referencing mostly classic trilogy stuff.
There were a few last-minute changes on the Blockade Runner poster at the very end because there was some conflict with Clone Wars, but
Forthcoming Clone Wars.
yeah, forthcoming Clone Wars. I'm not even sure what's going. It must be in season 3 somewhere.
Yeah.
But I've had that happen before too. I mean, I've worked on a kid's book back when episode 1 was coming out, and had to illustrate that before the movie was even out. So they sent me all sorts of pictures, like Jar Jar I'd never seen before, and which was really strange because I have never even heard his voice or anything, and I had to draw him throughout this whole book, and had no idea really how he moved or how he walked, so it was a little bizarre seeing the movie because it wasn't the voice I pictured in my head, but
Well, and it's the same way for the toy industry too, because in the toy industry, just like publishing, you work so far in advance of things coming out. Like we work on toys all the time, and we're sculpting stuff a year and a half before the movie comes out. So sometimes we're working on projects before trailers or teasers have even been released. We'll just get sheets of reference from movie studios, and just kind of have to work from that. So
you were working on the Queen's Naboo starship playset well before episode 1 came out. So.
yeah, the big giant queen ship that Kenner did. I was working on that thing. Wow, I'm trying to think when that was. That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
That was right after we met, I think. But I was building that out of foam core and had some basic drawings, large scale printouts from Lucasfilm of kind of basic model stuff off the 3D model they used for the movie. But that was all stuff where you have to sign all sorts of confidentiality agreements to get, because they don't want any of that stuff leaking out. And then, from the time I was working on that thing till it showed up on the shelf, that was probably 2 years from the time I started working on it. So it's like, we're doing that now. Like we've got projects going on now for stuff that's coming out a year and a half from now.
One of the other projects we have coming up, the Millennium Falcon book due in August, September?
Labor Day weekend, I think.
Oh, okay. They had some preview copies at the show, but it's a kind of a different take on the technical work. It's thick board pages, and you get to flip through the Millennium Falcon, like taking it apart with each page. It's through 10 layers.
I don't know if everybody's familiar with kind of anatomy books where you have pages and it looks like a whole human figure on it, and you peel that off, and it's kind of the skin layer comes off, and you get to see muscles, and then the next page is about the bones, and then the next page it just keeps working through. We kind of did that with the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
So all
10
the way through
layers
the
front
ship.
and back.
So You get to see it from a full view from the top and a full view from the back, and then every time you turn a page, there's a little bit more of it that opens up, and you see inside the hall and in the hallways and where Han and Chewie hide. And
Yeah, that one's all rendered full color, kind of a realistic look to it. But yeah, that we saw the preview copies at the show. Just recently got the copies ourselves, so it's gonna be a really cool book.
What else do we have coming out? We
got the Vader version of that we have to start when we get home next week.
And we're in the very earliest stages of starting the next set of blueprints for DK, which will be an Imperial edition. So all the bad guy stuff.
Just kind of choosing our subject matter at this point because we have to narrow it down to the 5 posters. I know DK is keen on getting a Star Destroyer, maybe even a Super Star Destroyer on the next poster set. You know, we've probably got at least 3 in the works, I think, right now.
We spend a lot of nights on the phone together talking about ridiculous detail stuff that nobody really needs to know.
That my wife rolls her eyes at.
Stuff that, like, it's not on any of the posters, but we know how all the things work on a bowcaster. Which buttons do what, how it opens to load the corals in it. We know all that stuff. So when the next set comes along and we have to do a bowcaster specific poster, it's all figured out already.
Yeah. We'll have strange conversations about like the missile launchers on the Millennium Falcon. Like, how exactly do those
they launch
work?
from the top or bottom? Do they come out between the mandibles, or do they come out of the front of the surface?
Are in there?
How many are in there? Do those fit? Are there doors? Are there racks that they slide on?
And then we'll go on and ask like Lucasfilm, well, what do you think, this or this? And Lucasfilm's like, you put way more thought into this than we have. You pick. So that's why they still kind of ask us questions about things like official dimensions or other technical aspects of things.
Yeah, we've had it pretty lucky with Lucasfilm in that they know that we're pretty thorough with what we do, and a lot of times approvals can be hard going through there when people want to change things. But one fun story is that we were working on the Millennium Falcon, and we did a side view of it, so you could stand a guy inside the hallway, the cockpit hallway, and we know from the movie like how big a guy looks in that hallway, and so we could make the hallway the right size. But then when you do that, you realize how big the ship is, and because you're using a 6-foot standard guy in there, you can project out exactly how long the Millennium Falcon is. And at the time, Lucasfilm's official dimension or official length of the Millennium Falcon was 86 feet, if I remember right, something like that. But 86 feet, if you would have made the Millennium Falcon 86 feet at the time, the guy's chest would have been outside of the ship if he was standing on the floor. So
you might not realize, but like in the movies, the sets and the exterior view of the Falcon that you see in the movies, the inside set does not fit in there at all. Like the inside set's much bigger, and they usually build the exteriors of the ships like maybe 80% of the actual size they should be, just because it's cheaper. It saves them 20% of the cost, for movie production, or they might only build half the ship like they did for A New Hope. So there's kind of a lot of things we have to resolve like that when doing the posters.
And when we did blow the ship up to the right size and could send a dimension off how big it was 114 feet long, which was a pretty significant change from where it was originally, which normally throws up a huge red flag for Lucasfilm. They don't want to change anything that's been kind of established, and understandably so. They don't want to contradict anything that's come before. But I mean, because we were doing such technical work and so thorough with it, we just sent a quick note back saying like, that's really the dimension it has to be, and listed a bunch of reasons why and ways we could have compromised it, but it just made a lot more sense to do it that way. And we just got a brief note back saying, okay, 114 feet it is.
Yeah.
So now the new dimension
after the website got changed and
everything kind of like rolled through the
official
Lucasfilm
dimensions.
chain.
Yeah.
So.
Lucasfilm's database got changed, and anything that's come out since has been
114 feet. Yeah. I mean, and it's one of the nice things about this is like with doing multiple views and making sure they're all in scale and figuring all that stuff out. It actually helps them out a lot because they can say, okay, that does fit, and we can make a little more sense of it and make it a little more real for people.